30 degrees Fahrenheit, 8:30 in the morning, which bodes well for the rest of the day unless something comes through. I don't think something is going to come through, like a front or something. And I'm playing around with stuff. The stupid thing that I bought yesterday doesn't work, so I'm going to take it back, apparently. And I'm going to go try and do some research and find the USB to HDMI adapter that they use for this YOLO box. Took Jimmy out for a walk and shot a little segment for this Backroads, my other channel. I mean, Stella had panicked and tried to claw her way through the bedroom wall, and she took out a piece of trim. And it was amazing. It was like she turned it into sawdust, the lower half of it. I don't understand that dog. She really had a rough time. She is not able to get over. We went to, and when we came back, we found that she had torn up a baseboard in the same way. She just thinks that we're gone forever and she's going to be locked in that room forever, and I don't know how she survived us. I guess people will leave her, lock her in. It's kind of like I can't really do that, so I can't take Jimmy with me. That's a little better. Going sideways instead of aligning us with the direction we're going. I guess not everything can work perfectly. So yeah, I'm gonna try and continue. I can't do it today because I have to go to bed early to have a doctor's appointment. And if I don't go to sleep early, I won't go to sleep, and that's not going to be good. So but I'm going to continue to try when the weather's good to get up and to go out while I'm still awake and get exercise. And I guess that means I won't have either dog with me. You know, both dogs have to suffer because one dog has mental issues, and that's the way it works. And I think that those mental problems also led to her hurting herself. She just had to, I think she had to go after something, and she wasn't content to stay in the yard, and she tried to get out and caught her leg on something. That's what we think happened. We don't know. Lots of road destruction going on. I think all of this is water department. I've also seen fiber optics which is kind of hopeful that some crews are coordinating. I know the mayor had brought it up as a pet peeve of his that then that same patch of road, brand new road, and do something else and leave behind a mess and potholes. So maybe people, this company decided to do better and quick. Like one time Southwest Boulevard was completely redone, and for the first time ever it had a smooth ride, and that lasted about a week, and out came the water department and tore trenches all through the middle of it. And then when they put the patches on, they were rough and uneven, and it was just as bad as it had ever been, which is a waste of time and money. I have to go through the, I can't find the setting on this phone that orients the phone to whichever direction you're holding it on most apps. Some apps, thankfully, the ones that I care about, which is why I haven't really bothered, do it automatically, but try and use the phone in this fashion, it confuses some of the apps. I think that's what's going on with Google here. It's being confused by the phone settings, and it thinks that the left side of the phone is the top of the phone. My wheel is right up against the curb. Barely enough room. Alright. That's me changing the orientation of the phone by picking up the phone. Settings. General. of the things that should be like really apparent right up front are just not there. I'm just not finding it. It's crazy. Here comes the streetcar. Oh, there's plenty of room. I can do ignore. This thing is just too cheap. You can tell when I get frustrated. Now, Joby stuff is hit or miss. But one thing about Joby that's not hit or miss, it's always expensive. And if something is expensive, I expect it to be hit, always. To be good. And so that means I probably will look for substitutes to Joby because it's just too expensive. Does that sound harsh? I don't think so. I think that when you're spending your money on stuff, you needs to work. That's like Bubba. The difference between Kilroy and Bubba. Is that reversed? All right. I wonder. Oops, didn't need to see that. Get an overview of where I'm at, if you can even see that. It won't let me stay zoomed in. You know, one thing that kills an app is when it thinks it's smarter than you. It won't allow you to do something because it's designed to do something one way and one way only, and I ain't never used this app. I'd love to. The graphics are great, but you know what kills it? A, you can't have satellite view when it's giving directions, and B, it's very limited, and the most important one of all is it's awful. It'll get you lost most of the time, and it's the Apple map. So you can kind of see where I'm at in relation to everything. You can see the, and here comes somebody who wants to kill himself. And here comes, no, he's in a crosswalk. No, he's not in the crosswalk. But it doesn't matter, he's close enough to the crosswalk. We must be getting some weather. You get frustrated, dog. Yesterday, that part, figure out what people who have made it work use with whatchamachingle, YOLO box. Sounds like I'm saying yellow box. this map is it has the temperature on it. What is AOI 33? It's probably average something index or average, I don't know, maybe the average temperature for this time of year. Or maybe it's some fancy phrase for what it feels like. Unfortunately, around here, when the temperatures get nicer, it's also when the wind starts blowing. And so you may have temperatures in the 60s, which is like living with the air conditioner on. And in most cases would be comfortable, but if the wind blows, 30 degrees outside, especially in the shade. Jumper cable across the tracks. It's probably a safety measure. Grounding. So they don't, I bet you it has something to do with the signaling. Yeah, they're closing the circuit on the signal so that they have a stop indication in the CTC, centralized train control, which would be in this building right here next to us. So they don't get the streetcars too close to each other. They can tell where everything is. The rails carry a current. When the train crosses, it closes the circuit between the two rails, and it makes that block go red, saying that there's a train in that area. Maybe shouldn't be saying so much about that. Well, my understanding is pretty thin, and I probably got it all wrong. There was this very strange instance where I think back in the 30s, a train was deliberately derailed. They physically took the rails out, and when they did it, I'm not sure if they had centralized traffic control or not, but they probably had something like it. They seem to have been known what they were doing, because when they did it, they did what that guy was doing. They closed the circuit so they couldn't tell that the track was broken, the circuit was broken. Because if the if you break the rail, then it's supposed to make that whole segment go dark, and you'd stop traffic. And if the traffic is stopped long enough, the engineers would say, "What do you got holding us up there?" And the dispatcher would say, "I don't think we have anything." And then they would send a crew out to go check on it and find that the circuit, the track is broken. And the weird thing about that, they had a derailment, and then it happened again, I think like 50 years later, almost to the day or something. So they think that the two instances were related, and they also have a feeling that it's somebody who knew something about trains, and possibly it was somebody who worked for the railroad and had a grudge. And I can't remember where that is. I think it's major piece of track somewhere out in the desert, somewhere that I think maybe in Arizona and New Mexico, somewhere that, or maybe even I am to the Missouri River, and up here that's where the state line is. So go over that way and you're across the state line and into Kansas City, Kansas, and right across is the General Motors Fairfax plant, and it's resting on top of an old runway, an old airport. You can see the runways there. And it used to be a factory that manufactured planes right there. And that was the, during World War II, that was the B-25 plant, where they made B-25 bombers, or Mitchells, what they called them. Twin-engine bombers. I think they were okay performing planes. I don't think they were super duper speedy. I'm not sure. I think for bombers they were pretty fast. You know, when you have a full crew and a bomb load, you're bound to be slow. Those were the planes that were used during the Doolittle raid that bombed Tokyo, to let the Japanese know that they were not invincible. That really actually did very little damage, but it rattled the hell out of the Japanese. I think that there was a broadcast going on at the time, and you could hear panic voices and the air raid sirens and explosions in the background. So all the Japanese people knew, even with propaganda apparatus in place, and something unimaginable had happened. Of course, Japan at the time, they had become very militaristic and warlike. It just seemed to be a human sickness back in the 30s and 40s. Blame a lot of problems on other people and try and build empires. Although, you know, we can't judge too harshly. It's a lot of countries that were building empires at the time and come after a long line of other countries that had been doing it, and many of those countries called themselves allies, the quote-unquote good guys, and had done essentially the same kind of things earlier, although the genocide of World War II was something way beyond the pale. But there's no country in that conflict that could claim to have clean hands. Everybody's got a lot of dirt in their history. And a lot of what happened in World War II was because of the harshness of terms and conditions that were laid out in the First War. The very unforgiving nature on nations when they should have just been saying, you know, this was a sick. The United States kind of led the way. Abandon our own effort in trying to build a workable peace between nations. Partly because the European powers that had won World War I were so adamant at getting revenge and fulfilling their hatred that they laid down such harsh terms that you know there was going to be a second war. World War II was actually World War I with a 20-year ceasefire. That the Japanese people allowed themselves to be taken over by a militaristic regime, and it led them to a horrible disaster. And since that time, and you know, I think the true nature of Japanese people is actually very peaceful. And since that time, they have figured out other ways to solve their problems and have become, in many ways, the number one country in the world for a lot of things. I mean, 1970s and 80s were really the years where they shone, and then in the 90s their economy started having problems. And one thing that's funny to me is I hear people talking, you know, the Japanese have this kind of imagery of being super efficient and really good at, and you know, on an individual level, individual basis, it's probably true. But apparently the government there is the most inefficient thing. Which seems strange because it seems like they are very efficient. You know, the streets are very clean. Their rail system is like the best in the world. You know, and among industrial nations, the United States rail system, the passenger rail system, is one of the worst in the world. Don't have much of a rail infrastructure. And I think among industrialized nations, your rail system is like like an indication as to the health of your civilization. Maybe we should bear that in mind when we let people talk about how we should subsidize rails, blah blah, that's for poor people, blah blah blah. Like, no. Actually, in the northeast corridor of the United States, the American railroad, so it's probably better to compare our countries that have large expanse out of us. Their bullet trains are some of the best in the world, and that's with a supposedly communist regime running everything. Well, anyway, this little experiment is done. I gotta pack it in and